Plenary, please come on in and take a seat if you're standing in the back. If people who are standing in the back could close the door behind you and come on in and take a seat, that would be great. Welcome to the plenary session here at IETF 104. My name is Alyssa Cooper. I'm the chair of the IETF. We're here in lovely Prague, once again, one of our favorite cities. And yay! As people probably know, at a typical IETF meeting, we have lots of great tutorials. We actually had a longer tutorial session just today on modern router architecture. And earlier this week on Sunday, there was a really special tutorial where we went kind of above and beyond the typical content. I don't know how many of you got to go, but there was a tutorial about how to create an internet. So in case you don't like the one that we have, we're trying to teach people how to build a new one. If anybody wants to come to the mic later and tell us what they learned in the tutorial about how to create an internet, I think the rest of us would be very much appreciative. In fact, it was a tutorial about how to create an internet draft with tools that support our new RFC format. So I actually encourage you to go take a look at the materials there if you're going to be submitting drafts in the new RFC format. And if you're less interested in building a new internet and more interested in building something else, you may have checked out the adjacent conference about the intersnack. If anybody attended that and you want to come to the microphone and tell us what that's about, that would also be most appreciative. I really want to know what the intersnack is because I have no idea what it actually is. So here's a bit on our agenda today. We'll be hearing from our meeting co-hosts shortly. Then we'll have brief updates from myself, from our outgoing and incoming IRTF chairs, from the RFC editor, from those who work on the administration of the IETF, both at the staff level and the board level. We'll hear from the IETF Trust and from our previous NomCom chair substitute, because our actual previous NomCom chair couldn't be with us, and our next NomCom chair. We'll hear a little bit about the upcoming Postel Award for this year, a preview of IETF 105. We'll have a recognition portion for a number of people who will be transitioning out of various roles in the IETF. And then we're going to have our typical open microphone sessions. You'll see, because we no longer have the IAOC, we will have an open microphone session with the IETF LLC board for the first time. And there's no technical plenary topic today, so I'm sure this will be very short and sweet. So first, I'd like to thank our co-hosts for this meeting, CZNIC and Cisco. We wouldn't be able to put these meetings on without the support of our sponsors and in particular of our hosts who make a huge donation of support to the IETF. So if I could ask Cullen and Andre to come up, we have gifts of appreciation for you. Oh, Cullen is here.
So hello everybody, welcome to Prague, even from me. It's your 5th meeting in Prague, so you know everything, and that I'm getting to a very difficult position because it's 7th time I'm speaking in front of you, trying to say something silly about Czech Republic and trying to avoid talking about my company. And guys, I'm really, getting out of topic. So last time, I think I spoke a little bit about Czech language. I taught you some Czech words. In IETF 93, I talk about the Czech personality, how Czechs behave, and this time I would like to talk a little bit about the area we are in. I think you all know it because it's your first time here, but still, if maybe I can share a few words from the viewpoint of a local. So here's the map of Prague, and I would like to introduce you 5 city districts. They are very close. You can walk there, although you have the tram ticket for the whole week, so you can travel to all the various parts of Prague. But those areas, those districts are walkable. We are in a pretty modern part called Karlín. To be honest, it's not a very interesting part of Prague. It used to be an industrial area, so there used to be many warehouses. Now it's turning to a residential area. One interesting fact is that here used to invent one of the greatest inventors of the Czech history, Mr. Křižík, who created the self-adjustable arc lamp, which at that time was superior to Edison's light bulb. But other than that, not very nice part of Prague. One interesting fact about this part, it was really badly damaged by a great flood in 2002. Many houses collapsed, which surprisingly led to a new development of this area. So many new houses were built, many new offices or residential houses were built. Even actually this hotel was flooded. In 2002 we couldn't be here because the water level was a little bit higher than we are now. And what was interesting that the management of the hotel had a very interesting plan. When the water level was rising, they flooded the basement of the hotel by clear water. So when the flood came, this water helped the building statics, and also the dirty water couldn't get in. So this hotel was reopened pretty quickly after the flood, while the other building, as I said, some of them collapsed or couldn't be used for a long time. Another area you probably know quite well, it's called Nové Město. That's easy to translate. It's called New Town. It's a little bit weird name because New Town is part of what we call the historical center of Prague. So it has been new for more than 650 years actually. But it's still a little bit younger brother of a city part called Old Town, which is more than 1,000 years old. So that's why it was founded by one of the greatest kings and Holy Roman emperors, Charles IV, who really was pretty important for the city. So he founded this city part, the New Town, and also another part which I really like. It's called Vinohrady. The translation is vineyard. So it was not supposed to be a residential area like it is now, but it really was an attempt to produce wine in this cold and ugly city. So it was not really successful, and also after the rapid growth of the city in the 150 years ago, the municipality decided to turn it to residential area. So that was the end of attempt trying to grow grapes in Prague, and we could really fully concentrate on beer, which I think was very, very good idea. So and it's still working now. So this is one of the dominant of that area. There is much less tourists than in the city center, and a lot of great restaurants and pubs there. Second dominant is another church. It's on the city square called Náměstí Jiřího z Poděbrad. I know it's very easy to say that name. There is an underground station with the same name, Jiřího z Poděbrad. And for some strange reasons, the expat, the foreigners living here, call it just JZP. I don't know why, but they somehow don't want to say this beautiful name. Interesting about this city square is that the main building of CZNIC is 100 meters from that church. So that's an area we work, and that's what we like there. Another and maybe more interesting part is called Žižkov. It has the same history as vineyards. It was also part of vineyards at the time, and then vineyards were split into two areas. One is now called Vinohrady Vineyard again, and the second part got a name after one of the most interesting commanders. His name was Žižka, of course, and this is one of the 6 European commanders who never lost a single battle. And this is not caused by the fact that he didn't battle at all, but this was caused by the fact that he was really good. By the way, the time he was leading, it was in the beginning of 15th century, shortly after 400s. He was leading a kind of proto-Protestant church, and that time the idea that there would be other than Catholic Church not very popular in Europe, so Vatican decided to kind of eliminate this movement, and they issued like 5 Holy Crusades that went to Bohemia, and they were all defeated. 3 of them by this gentleman, and after his death by his successor. So very interesting fighter, and maybe the spirit of this man is kind of a part of this part of this district, because it's kind of rebellion part of Prague, the most Bohemian part of Prague. So the source of wisdom called Wikipedia says that this district has highest concentration of pubs per capita in all European districts. So I'm sure it's true, or at least not very far from true. Compared to Vinohrady, where the pubs are fancy and you can still see some tourists there, in Žižkov you will not see any. They are just locals, and the good thing that anytime you are thirsty, you can go there and have a beer, any time of day, night, whatever. This city part never stops. It used to have a little bit bad reputation, and the people living there are still proud of it, so they never accepted the fact that Žižkov became part of Prague in 1922, and some of them still call it Free Republic of Žižkov. So it's kind of independent part of Prague, and many free air meetings, happenings, festivals are happening there. So some very area that I would recommend for somebody who wants to see the local culture. That was the 4th district, and the 5th district is also very interesting, mainly by the fact that I really couldn't find anything interesting about it at all. That's amazing part of Prague. It's really tough. I can illustrate it by a sign that was found on one of the buildings. Please read it. That's an amazing part of the city. So maybe you're asking yourself why I chose it, right? Why? Because I wanted to check if you did your homework. Do you remember my presentation 2 years ago? I taught you this simple sentence. And I told you, please repeat it, we will have a contest, and who will be able to say it, will win something. So again, it's very simple sentence, strč prst skrz krk. By the way, somebody after my presentation tweeted that he wasn't sure whether the English sentence below is a translation or the way how to pronounce it. So I just wanted to make clear that this is a translation, actually. It's not so tough. So I'm sure all you did have your homework, right? So who wants to be first? I know, if something is too easy, nobody wants to be first, right? It's like going to the mic and say grass green, right? So, okay, but I do believe you did your best. So the next level would be name of this city district. It has all the beauty of Czech language. It has R used as a vowel. It has the magical letter Z, which, it's a nightmare for all the foreigners in this country, and it's part of my name, actually. And it has also very interesting meaning. Again, the English words in parentheses below, it's translation, not the way how to say it, okay? So this city part is called Cutthroats, which is promising, You would believe there must be something interesting, but it's not. So the simple Czech word is hrdlořezy, okay? and who will be able to say to say this name with the sentence on the next meeting will have a beer from me, okay? So again, thank you very much for choosing Prague as your IETF city, and see you at the next meeting, IETF 110.
Thank you. We do have a gift for our other co-host who I saw walk in, so would you like to come up and get your gift, Cisco?
It's a pleasure to be able to sponsor this along with our friends at CZNIC. Love to be back in Prague this time. I hope everyone this week gets a ton of great work done in a style that makes new friends and makes it a pleasant place to work. Have a great week and welcome to Prague.
All right, so I have a few items to report on. There's lots more information in the written report that the IESG and myself sent out to the IETF mailing list before the meeting. Today we're going to look a little bit at some participant statistics, talk a little bit about some of the meeting experiments that we've been running, follow up from the open microphone session at the last plenary, brief update on the Ombuds team, and I'll spend a moment on our standards of professional behavior here in the IETF. So these are our participant statistics for this meeting. We have about 1,200 people who are here on site, 234 first-time attendees, which is a nice high number for an IETF meeting. Fairly similar attendance to what we had a year ago in London, and 63 different countries represented here at this meeting. If we take a look at the trends, what this shows you is the overall attendance, the first-time attendees, and the set of attendees who've attended 80% or more of prior meetings. You can see, as you would expect, the meeting attendance kind of goes up and down depending on the location and the time of year, and the first-time attendees fluctuates somewhat in tandem with that, although a bit on its own curve. And then the last line is a little bit on the decline, so the true believers in the IETF who have been around the longest are becoming a smaller group over time. We had a record-breaking IETF hackathon on Saturday and Sunday. 370 people were on site working on 44 different projects, every different kind of, every area of the IETF represented, and lots of people working on projects adjacent to IETF technologies. We also had the Hack Demo Happy Hour on Monday night, where teams got to present some of what they had worked on over the weekend. And for those who are interested in joining in on this particular kind of fun, we have another hackathon scheduled at the start of the week of IETF 105 in Montreal. So please consider that when you make your travel plans. You don't need to be previously involved in a project in order to get started. There's lots of people there who can help you find a team, find something to work on over the weekend, and hopefully help advance the implementation and deployment of IETF standards. If we look at the trend for the hackathon, attendance is growing over meeting, more or less. And as I said, we had a big jump from our previous record in Bangkok to now. So this is definitely an event that's attracting more and more attention and participation from people who attend the IETF meeting and also others, which is fantastic. So, meeting experiments. Some people might be aware that we are running an experiment at this meeting with unstructured time in the agenda. This is actually the second different iteration of this particular experiment. So at IETF 103, we ran an experiment where we had some unstructured time on the Friday of the meeting week. There were rooms available that people could book on a first-come, first-served basis, but there were not any working group sessions on the Friday. We conducted a meeting survey after IETF 103, just like we do after every meeting, and the survey feedback indicated that almost nobody liked having unstructured time on Friday, but people were quite interested in having unstructured time in the middle of the week. And as a result, for this meeting, we scheduled some unstructured time in the middle of the week. So earlier today, we had a block that was free. There were side meeting rooms, again, available to book. And just as a note, because there's, I think, been some confusion about this, the way that we've been able to accommodate this and still accommodate all of the working groups that put in a request for time is by maintaining enough slots to accommodate all of those groups, but shortening some of the slots. So we have the same number of slots available, more or less, that we've had for many years, but we've offered different size slots in order to be able to accommodate that. So we've received lots of feedback about this experiment already on the IETF list and the working group chairs list, so thank you very much for that, and we're definitely welcome to hear more from you. We're really going to be relying on the meeting survey to provide us with a broad-based view, not just an opinion here and there on a mailing list, but to try to get a sense of the whole community, or the whole community that's willing to fill out a survey about how they like what we're doing with the schedule, what we're trying with the schedule. We've crafted a bunch of very specific questions on this topic that are in the meeting survey that will be going out toward the end of the week or possibly over the weekend. So if this is a topic that you care to voice an opinion on, please fill out the meeting survey when it goes out. You can also, of course, always send feedback to the IESG at our email address. And before we ran the experiment at IETF 103, we announced it many months in advance because it was on the Friday. We knew that it would affect people's travel plans, so we announced it in May and then ran the experiment in November. For this iteration of the experiment, we wanted to wait and see how many working group requests came in and whether we thought we could actually make it work without creating too much conflict between the working groups. So we waited to be real specific about what we were going to do with the unstructured time until the working group requests went in. For the next iteration, if we carry forward this experiment at all, which we may or may not, we plan to announce it further in advance. We thought we would wait in case it just seemed like it would create too much conflict, but it seems like waiting created more of a problem than the problem it solved. So certainly, if we intend to try another version of this experiment, we'll tell people further in advance next time. We've also been running an experiment around a new event on Sunday evening called Request for Conversation, Hot RFC. This event includes lightning talks and other kind of brief pitches to encourage people to brainstorm, collaborate, to announce something that might be going on later in the week. So this took place on Sunday at 6 o'clock, and there were 15 different presentations. You can check out the proceedings online. We've now had this event 3 or 4 times. Looking at Aaron. 4? 3? 5? 4. Okay. So it seems to the IESG that people like this. We could maybe move this out of the experimental phase and declare it a successful experiment. But we're also always looking for feedback about how to change or improve it. So please send that our way. And many thanks to Aaron Falk for incubating this idea and for making it a success. So at the last plenary, we had some open microphone discussion about behavior and conduct in working groups. We talked about this at some length. And as a result of that, the IESG kicked off some initial discussion with the working group chairs by email in December. And we've continued to kind of go back and forth, take the feedback from the working group chairs, and discuss it within the IESG and back with the working group chairs again. And as a result of that conversation, there's a couple different areas that we're looking to explore further. One is around guidance or training for the IETF leadership and for the working group chairs about managing difficult situations that may arise. And then the other one is around a better means of archiving expired work. So one of the topics that came up in this discussion was that when people enter newly into a working group, they might not be aware of what work has happened in the past, or more importantly, what discussions have happened that didn't produce any RFCs, but were considered concluded or abandoned by the group. And so there's been some conversation about how we could better demarcate when a piece of work or a discussion has concluded without proceeding on to standardization. So we're still having conversations with people about those things, and we'll continue to follow up with the community if we figure out what we think we could do to help. We also have a new member of our Ombuds team. Melinda Shore started in January as part of this team, and she joins Allison Menken and Pete Resnick. So thank you to Melinda for being willing to serve, and to Allison and Pete for continuing. Really important function for the IETF. If you ever have an issue with harassment, these are your people that you can go to get guidance and advice, and to speak with someone in confidence. We are really striving to create and maintain an environment here where people feel included, and where everyone feels like they get treated with dignity and respect. We have a number of different policies and guidelines that go into more detail about this, so I encourage you to check them out. And the Ombuds team that you just saw on the screen can be reached at their email address, and there's more information about them on their website. As I said at the top, there's a bunch more information covered in our online report and in the reports from the various other bodies. So if you want more details, please take a look there. And we're always writing updates about various things on the blog, including a preview of this meeting. There will be highlights from this meeting posted there as well. And with that, I'd like to invite our outgoing and incoming IRTF chairs to come on up.
Hello.
I'm awake now.
That's a good way to retire somebody. I don't want to touch that. All right, so Collins and I are going to tell you about the IRTF at IETF 104. And first of all, I want to say thanks to the IRTF. It's been amazing. Thank you, Prague. I'm very happy to have my term ending here. I have a big lump in my from that. I wanted to just reflect a little bit about what happened in these 2 years. 2 years might not seem like a lot of time, but it feels like a lot of time, and we actually had a lot of things happen. And the research groups overall have been very good at fulfilling their mission of being rigorous and thinking about the long horizon while also thinking how might this be applied. So rigorous, long horizon, and relevant. And in the time since I got started, we've had 5 new ones: path-aware networking, decentralized internet infrastructure, the non-blockchain research group, privacy enhancements and assessments, and we've determined that it was 3 meetings, so it's actually transitioning to not proposed now. A new quantum internet proposed research group that just started, and a bunch of you went to the tutorial, and I hear it was really fun and enlivening. And then one that's starting and will meet this week, later in the week, the computation in the network proposed research group. And I also think of this as 2 years of really wonderful community growth for IRTF, but also for the I family. We had a bunch of people coming because of the Applied Networking Research Prize, including returnees, as we got donations from some of our sponsors to give us more travel funds. So not just the 6 awards, but people who'd been here before and seemed like it would benefit from coming. And then these new research group chairs that I've mentioned. I'll show you a list of people. I'll just flash it by. The workshop in the Applied Networking Research workshop in 18 last year had an innovation suggested by its chairs of meeting during IETF week. And as a result, there were 100 participants at that. They were either new to the IETF or were very entirely or had been only very rarely, and many of them stayed and participated. So I think this has been a good innovation. We're going to continue this. There was a lot of of growth of communities because of IRTF groups going to the hackathons. And I just want to call out especially HRPC and Thing to Thing research group among the many as using those hackathons extremely well. MapRG, which is the measurement research group, not only had tremendous presenters, but also grew a great big repository of data that you should take a look at. Even though documents are often the story for the IETF, for the IRTF, you should also check the wikis and Git repos for our artifacts and reporting and comments and discussion, as well as the mailing list. And this is just a selection of some of the new people, and I'm not going to call people out, but we have a bunch of people who are from many places, and it's been a really interesting time. And these are just the people associated with the events in my 2 years. And now I'm going to welcome Colin as the incoming IRTF chair. I said on this slide that he had just received the IRTF chair dot, but there actually isn't one. And I would have given him the IRSG dot, but he already had one. So instead, I covered up my IRSG dot with a surveillance, pervasive monitoring is an attack dot that I've just created, and also one from the Women in Technology dot that says yes we can from NetNod. Now over to Colin. Colin's been at the IETF for quite a long time, and he's done lots of different working group chairships and contributions, largely in transport. It's been observed that we've had a lot of transport folks become IRTF chairs, and I think as a transport person that's entirely natural, but Colin may speak. Yeah, and then he's on the faculty of the University of Glasgow, and there's his website and his picture, and welcome to Colin.
Thank you, Alison. I have to say, honored and a little humbled to be selected, and very much look forward to working with the community, although I think I may treat the absence of a dot as an excuse to pretend I was never nominated. Too late, all right. So the first thing I would like to do is say a very, very big thank you to Alison for all her hard work over the last couple of years. Alison, I think, has worked very, very hard to increase the diversity in the IRTF. We have a much more diverse set of people in the research group chairs in the IRSG, and a much more diverse set of research groups and topics, which I think is very, very valuable, very important to increase the diversity this way. She's chartered some very interesting, very exciting new research groups. I think in particular the Quantum Internet group, which I think you chartered, is going to give me the biggest learning curve of any group in this organization. So I look forward to trying to keep on top of their documents. And I think she's also done a very good job with the Applied Networking Research Prize, and we had some talks earlier in the week in the IRTF Open meeting, and there were a few very excellent research prize talks there. And also growing and enhancing the visibility of the Applied Networking Research Workshop, which I think is a really great way of bringing people from the research community in, getting them to talk to the standards community. And I think it's very beneficial for the long-term health of both organizations. So, again, thank you, Alison. We have a small token of the thanks from the community, which I would like to present. And thank you once again. Okay, so I just have two forward-looking things I'd like to mention before we finish. The first, the Applied Networking Research Workshop. It happened. It's been running for the last couple of years. Last year in Montreal, it took place on the Monday, and we had some really good interactions there. will be happening again, coincidentally in Montreal, since we're going back this summer, again in the Monday of the IETF week. This is an academic research workshop. The results will be published by the ACM. If you have research work relating to applied networking research, please consider submitting a paper. The submission deadline is the 10th of May, so there's still plenty of time to do that. And this is being run by Jana Ienga, who is here somewhere. I don't see where he is. Stick your hand up, Jana, if you're there. I don't see him. He's here somewhere this week and is a long-term IETF participant. And Philippa Gill from the University of Massachusetts. In addition, which perhaps slightly smaller interest, but there is a workshop on evaluation performance and interoperability of Quick, which will relate to a large number of people in the transport area. The submission deadline on the 15th of April, which Lars Eggert and Jörg Ott are running. And again, if you have research work or an interest in Quick, please consider submitting to that workshop. Thank you. I look forward to working with everyone, and I look forward to my time. Thank you.
We have next the RFC editor.
So much fun seeing all my closest friends again. So I know you've seen me up here a few times, but I'm just going to check. Do you guys know that I've been working on this format project? Crazy talk, I know. If you are new or you live under a rock, I've been working on changing the format to RFCs for the last 6 years. And the goals of the project are to create a XML file that will be used to transform into plain text, PDF A3, and HTML. The HTML actually has a proper CSS. You'll be allowed to use SVG line art in black and white. You'll be allowed to use non-ASCII characters. All of this information is documented in various and sundry RFCs, all of which will go through a BIS process once we've actually taken what we thought might work and actually checked to see did it actually do what we wanted it to do. All of which is going to be happening this year. So project status discussion happens on the XML to RFC dev list because we're really talking about the tools that have been in play under development over the last couple years. I wanted to do a quick shout out to Callus Software. They are a partner of Adobe, and they've donated to the RFC editor the software we needed to create PDF A3. There's not a lot of libraries out there that will create you a PDF A3 file. As of Monday, the data tracker accepts V3 XML. If you get really enthusiastic about this, you can go to the XML to RFC website, the experimental page, and say, you know what, I have a V2 file. Could you make it V3? Do the thing. And it will automatically create a V3 file, which you can submit and say, well, I want to see what the HTML is going to look like. And it will show you. Or you could say, I want to see what the text output looks like, because it's slightly different than today. And it will show you that too. In my head, I would very much like for this to be in production come August. Hold that thought. I have a sneaking suspicion that Murphy's Law is going to hit me up the head with something called Cluster 238. Optimistically, I'm told that will happen, Cluster 238, we really hope will come out in May. But, things get delayed sometimes, and I'm just, it's coming out in August. I know it's coming out in August. I'm just waiting for it. So the timing is definitely open to a little bit of question right now. There is an inordinate amount of behind-the-scenes work going on. So if you look at the RFC editor report, for example, you'll see that the RC Production Center is not meeting the SLA. This is something we knew that would happen and that we've been trying to prepare people for quite some time. We're not missing it by a lot, but just enough to turn that X to be red. So that's not going to stop either, at least for the next few months. So be aware that there is a slowdown in getting stuff out while we try and make sure that we're ready for V3. That's the highlight of what I wanted to tell you about. There's a couple other slides here in my deck because I also told folks on a completely unrelated fashion that I was going to start basically a vendor satisfaction survey to see how the RC Production Center is doing. And I promised you an update by IETF 104. So that update is in these slides. If you've got questions about it, you can look at that, and you can drop me a note if you want any more information that I can share. I have someone staring at me for a question. Should I take that or wait for it? I'm coming back. If you have questions at the mic, I'm coming back with the IAB because they can't get rid of me. So just come back to the mic then, and I will answer your question. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have the IETF Administration LLC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Portia Stanley. I am the IETF LLC Executive Director Interim, and I'm here to give the ED report. As Alyssa spoke earlier, I'd like to thank our sponsors, our hosts for IETF 104, Cisco and Cizeknik. I wanted to make sure I tried to pronounce that correctly, and I really do appreciate everything that you all have done to make this meeting a success. Our silver sponsor, Akamai, thank you very much, and our bronze sponsor, thebestvpn.com. And connectivity sponsors, Dial Telecom and T-Mobile. Thank you very much for your circuits. Of course, you make everything happen for us, so thank you. And we also wanted to make sure we thanked our equipment sponsors, because it takes a lot of equipment to actually bring the circuits and everything in to make everything work. Cisco again, and Juniper Networks. And for the Sisters program, thank you, Fastly, for your donation and support of the Sisters. And for the welcome reception, thank you to the Hilton Prague. And for another successful hackathon, thank you to Oracle for your donation, and also to Cisco and DevNet. For the code sprint, thank you to all of the contributors for the IETF data tracker enhancement. And to the NOC, thank you for everyone who is involved. We have Winespeed, Miracle, and also our volunteers, of course, who make everything happen for the NOC. And if you have time, please join our host speakers for the series. We have Frank Brockners and Benoit Klaas from Cisco. That's tomorrow, 12:30 in the Grand Ballroom. And thank you to Comcast, NBC Universal for sponsoring IETF 105 next year in Montreal. I'm sorry, this year in Montreal. And also, we have a new global host, Nokia, and I'm not sure if our representative is here, but we do want to thank you very much for your hi. Thank you very much for coming on as a global host. The global hosts are the highest level of support for the IETF, and we really appreciate that. And as well, they have already signed on to support IETF 106 in Singapore, so thank you very much. Again, to all of our global hosts, much appreciation for all that you do. And regarding sponsorship changes for the IETF, Ken Board and some of you, I would say, had a chance to meet Ken during the last year. His contract has concluded as the IETF sponsorship fundraiser, and the board is really thanks to Ken for all of his hard work. He did a lot while he was here during the last year, and as we move on, the incoming board, or who are official now, will take time to actually develop a longer-term plan for what they see as the sponsorship for and fundraising goals for the IETF LLC. So that's coming, and in the meantime, if you are interested in doing any type of sponsorships, please see me, Portia Winstanley. Thank you. And also, the generic, it's generic, but it still comes to one person. The sponsorship email address is sponsorship@ietf.org. Our future meeting venues, as you can take a look there, we have identified venues up through IETF 111 in San Francisco. And we just wanted to point out that we have dates and venues that are identified for the next almost 3 years of meetings. And where you see spots there, we do need sponsors for those. And we are also in the process of actually identifying and working on contracts for other venues. So a lot is happening for meeting venue for the IETF. The Prague meetings snapshot for paid and on-site attendance. 1,150, remote participants, 729, visa LOIs issued, 152, and our registration revenue is 831,107, sponsorship revenue, 390,000. And there's a registration breakdown. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Glenn Dean, and I'm going to run you through what the LLC board has been up to and working on since the LLC got formed at the end of August in 2018. We've been focused on 5 areas, really, to get the LLC up and running. It's like a brand new baby. You got to feed it and take care of it and make it happy. We've been finalizing the financial transaction or transfer from ISOC. That was probably one of the key things to accomplish in 2018 because ISOC was providing significant portions of the startup capital, if you will, for the IETF LLC. That was a very long road to get there, but we got there and the money's in the bank and we cashed the check, so yay. We've also, as part of the transition, there was a number of RFPs for services such as the Secretariat that were coming up due. As many people know, the contracts we have for these services are periodically required to be re-bid just to make sure that we're getting the best deal overall for the IETF. In particular, some of them were up in 2018 for a rebid as per the process, but because of the LLC coming on board and being founded, one of the things we did is we stalled many of them and delayed them into 2019 with temporary patches And so we sort of kicked it over to the incoming board to say, deal with this when you're fully constituted and you're up and running with all your governance and financial models in place. And so that will be taking place this year. So this will be the year of the RFP, I think, in 2019. The other thing we will also be doing, Portia is our interim director. She's always had that term stuck around her name, and that's because as part of the transition plan, the plan has always been that there will be a search done for the executive director. Portia had been the interim IED, sorry, thank you, and we renamed it the executive director because it better fit with the role within an LLC, and so we could understand it, work with sister orgs. We're going to be doing a search, and so that will be taking place. So if you're interested, there will be a process going out, and stay tuned. It will be happening very shortly. The other thing we've been doing is been getting ready for the incoming new board. It's been a lot of time of real big change, and the NomCom did their job, and the IESG did their job, and ISOC did their job, and they picked us a slate of 5 candidates, and we've been getting them prepared and ready to assume their job today. So I'm out of it, and they're into it. And another big part of the governance, by the way, is the LLC compliance program. One of the core requirements that ISOC put onto us before they would give us that money at the top of the agenda was that we have a compliance program in place, because they wanted to make sure that we were a well-run and well-managed LLC, and not just a bunch of guys and ladies that were going to take the money and run off to Hawaii. So we've been working very hard on getting that established, and the incoming board will continue that work on establishing the governance process. The other big important thing that was really made clear during the IESG working group discussions was transparency is huge here. We didn't want to create an LLC that was going to go off and be secretive and closed and just issue, orders down from on high. Just like the compliance process was important to ISOC, the transparency process was important to the community. And so we've been working very hard. One of the very first actions taken by the board when it started up in August was to declare that we will have public meetings. And we've been doing that all along, including when we had in the fall, or in December, we had a face-to-face for companies. And for the portions of that which are not confidential, because a lot of what we deal with is confidential legal contracts, personnel type stuff, and financial stuff, we have to be careful and keep that confidential. For that stuff that is not confidential, it was wide open for participants, and we did have a lot of people call in and join in. As well, the meeting minutes that we take during that are all made public and published. So the meetings are posted on our website. The agenda, the goal, we've put a stake in the ground is they will always come out a week ahead. So please join in and follow along if you want to know more about what's going on inside the LLC. And I have the pleasure of announcing and welcoming our 5 new board members. We have Jason Livingood in the middle there. He's been selected by the incoming board as their chair. We have Sean Turner, who's decided to become the treasurer. Peter Van Roost over on your left, my right. Lisa Cooper, you may have met her. And Maya, and forgive me Maya, I cannot do this one, Adjukovic. Okay. And that's the report from the outgoing board. Jason.
Great, thanks. Well, sorry. Shocking transition, right? Literally shocking. So I think the first thing is to thank our outgoing interim board members. I think Gonzalo Camarillo there. We have Ted Hardy and Glenn Dean. A round of applause, please, for these folks. I think the community really appreciates it. It was really an unprecedented kind of transition that we just went through from the IOC to this interim board with a great deal of uncertainty. And I appreciate, know the community does, appreciate your navigation of that. And I don't know when I do plaque things. All right, so if I could ask you each to come up, Ted and Gonzalo, please. And you're obviously already here. This is the Your Name, Your Plaque. actually says your name here. So this is you'll get a plaque like this, but with your actual name there. So first, thank you, Glenn, very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. All right, and we'll say thank you to Gonzalo next. You come on this side, it's much easier.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. And Ted, thank you as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, and so expected focus area for the board in the coming year. We have rather a lot of things to do, I think is an understatement. And I tried to just sort of list the high-level bits here. Obviously, we need to hire a full-time or permanent executive director. That's sort of job number one. And a lot of things can flow from that. We also know that we need to focus on the sort of revenue side of things, if you will. Certainly, Portia mentioned a bunch of our generous sponsors beforehand, but our intent is to grow that and to grow and build a foundation of support for the IETF. And we would sort of put those in two different buckets, if you will. One would be sponsorship, which was traditionally what we've done, and then fundraising, which is really more about sort of the other aspects of the endowment and so on. And those two things will go hand in hand in some ways, but there may be very different sort of target groups that we go after to try to fundraise. And of course, there are quite a number of policies and other sorts of legal things that we need, a compliance program. And these are needed even just to get things like insurance to cover meetings like this. You know, if someone has a problem and they injure themselves, you need liability insurance. And there's a whole host of things like this that we will need to hire people, that we will need to comply with IRS rules in the United States for tax purposes and so on. So we need to create all of those. Many of those are already in the IASA2 document, so you can get a sense of what they are, but there's a lot of them. Luckily, we've got some other very experienced board members that are here that are on other boards and have experience, and there are a lot of best practices that we'll be using. And then finally, we have a lot of services that are coming up for rebid in 2019, including the Secretariat, no small thing. And I would say throughout all these things, particularly around the policies, compliance, and especially the rebid, we are going to expect and need and rely upon a lot of feedback from the IETF community. We don't intend to do this, as Glenn said, in terms of the transparency requirements, to do this in a vacuum, but we are going to genuinely need and be asking for your requirements, your feedback in different areas, and I would encourage folks to do that because these are some big decisions and we want to make sure we make the right decisions for a lot of the supporting infrastructure and people that the IETF depends upon. And so in terms of contact information, all the standard stuff, there's a website, of course, email address for public feedback. You can reach out to that address at any time or any of the board members individually, of course. But if you send a mail there, it goes to all of the board members, no one else other than the board members, so it's private to within the board. And you can give us any feedback that you like or ask any questions. And of course, you can join any of the board meetings. We'll certainly be continuing the practices that Glenn and the prior interim board put in place around transparency of agendas and participation, these sort of things, and hopefully enhance that to some extent. And this report can be found at the URL below. It's also, I think, in the meeting material site someplace. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I think we're next on to the IETF Trust, right? So IETF Trust update, who's doing that? Kaveh. All right, hey, Kaveh. All right, so thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
So basically, I will. This is my goodbye speech, I would say, because so we have a new set of trustees, and you see the faces, I guess, on the screen. I guess most of you already know them, and I'm very happy that we have this set of people. Also, today we had an election, which was basically the last thing I executed as the trust chair, and Glenn was selected or elected as the chair, and Kathleen as the treasurer. And yeah, that's it.
So we don't seem to have pictures here in this part of the deck for the outgoing trust chairs. It's later? Okay, we'll cover that. That's why if you notice, I disappeared early off the stage. I thought, trust is on, I gotta run back and be up there, so I'll get off the stage.
So next we have the NomCom, Peter and Victor.
All right, on behalf of the absent Scott Mansfield, I'm giving the NomCom update for IETF 104. As you can see there, it says make sure someone is holding the ladder. And Scott had a small accident that involved a very quick descent from a ladder that keeps him from traveling for the couple of months. So, but he's here on Meet Echo, and we wish he were here in person. So, I'm happy to report all of the cats are in all of the boxes. We had, I believe, 54 unique nominees for 20 different positions. So the NomCom managed to get all of that done. I think that's probably a record for any NomCom. And we are finished for now. So we are in quiet mode. If something comes up, we will be reactivated for interim actions, but otherwise we're going to be handing off to the next NomCom. These are the 17 members of the 2018-2019 NomCom. Could I have a round of applause for their hard work? These fine folks, aside from doing the things that you see obviously at the meetings, also were part of weekly teleconferences, lots of email, and many deliberations. And these are the confirmed results of the NomCom process for 2018-2019. And please give these folks a round of applause as well. We're very appreciative for their service. I'd also like to thank the community. Without the community, the NomCom process would not go well at all. All of the people that ran our gauntlet of long questionnaires and perhaps grueling interviews, we thank them. The community members also who provided the large amounts of feedback that we get. We do read all of that. It's all kept in the data tracker, and we use that to guide our decisions. We also thank the IETF and ISOC leadership for their support and guidance. And finally, to the AMS staff, who has given us a lot of support on site. And finally, I'd like to introduce our incoming NomCom chair for 2019-2020, Victor Coursing. Victor.
I suppose I hand this back to you when I'm done. Only a couple of words. I don't really have a slide. It was a busy year, as Peter mentioned, and Scott did a really, really good job. So I only hope that in the incoming year that we can do as good of a job as Scott did. He was very, very organized. We had a lot of feedback, many hours reading all of your feedback. It was much appreciated. We could not do this without the support of all of the members who were voting, the members from the various bodies to help us along the way. Peter did a great job this is the third year he's basically here doing all this work, so I really appreciated all of Peter's guidance, and so just hope we can do a good job coming up. Please, if you're able to, please be part of the NomCom this upcoming year. It's a lot of work. It's very rewarding. You learn a lot about the IETF and about process. You learn a lot about the leadership, so I really hope to have a lot of folks put their names forward so that we can do as good of a job as the previous years. So thank you, and thank you, Peter.
Oh, did you want to do your call to action, or was that what? That was your call to action, okay. Okay, next up we have the Postel Award solicitation, Andrew.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm Andrew Sullivan. I'm the president and CEO of the Internet Society. I'm here to talk about the Jonathan B. Postel Service Award, which is something that the Internet Society gives out. It was established by the Internet Society to honor the individuals who make the Internet. You know, the Internet is a profoundly human thing. It's something that depends on people to make it happen, and it affects a lot of people. I never met John Postel, but I know him somehow through the work that he did and the legacy he left us. And there are people on the internet who do this for us. They make extraordinary efforts, and they give us things. They leave us things behind. So we have this award. It's in his name. And, you know, people get a trophy and they get some money. But mostly, they're recognized as one of these people. People who have made extraordinary contributions to all of us, who give us the network that we have today. Now, I know, sitting here in this room, is somebody who belongs on this list or somebody who knows somebody who belongs on this list. And so I want you to nominate them. We are very fortunate to have this marvelous tool. And we're very fortunate that there are people who work so hard to give it to us. We want people who have given sustained and substantial technical contributions and who also serve the community. The nominations are open until the 15th of May, and you can go to the URL there on the screen and nominate them. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andrew. And next we have the IETF 105 welcome. Come on back, Glenn.
So keep it quick. We're all going to go to Montreal again. Who loved Montreal last summer? I did. The food was awesome. The weather was great. Let's hope the weather holds as well as it did last time, because I had a great time. I think I probably put on 5 pounds because the food was so darn good in Montreal. Anyways, we're hosting the game. We're going to have a social, so look for news on that. It should be a lot of fun. I've been up to Montreal planning it, and we usually have a pretty good time at our socials, so I think just a bit of a hint. Get a ticket and come have some fun with us. Thanks.
So I wanted to spend a minute here to remember a dearly departed member of our community, Professor B. Jun, who sadly passed away in February far too soon. Many of you knew Professor B from his work in the SAVI working group and on other topics, including IPv6 and software-defined networking. From his post at Tsinghua University, he was also a significant contributor to the development of the internet in China. So please join me in a moment of silence to remember Professor B. Jun. Thank you. We have a number of members of our community to recognize whose roles will be changing or otherwise stepping down from various posts. So first, we're going to recognize Eric Rosen, who will be retiring, and I'm going to ask Alvaro to come on up to do the recognition.
Hi, Eric Rosen has been a contributor to the IETF and to the internet in general for a very, very long time. He has about 60 RFCs that he has published, most of them in the routing area. The first one was RFC 827. This was where he documented EGP, the Exterior Gateway Protocol. This was a protocol that held the internet together before BGP even existed. I met Eric personally about, well, many, many years after that. That RFC was published in 1982. By the time I met him in person, we were both working at Cisco. He had already done very significant contributions to the IETF. He had co-authored RFC 3031, which is the MPLS architecture RFC, and 2547, that's MPLS or BGP MPLS VPNs. These two have inspired hundreds of other RFCs, hundreds of working groups, and we still have a significant amount of work in the routing area. Eric was always, or has been, always a quiet person. Like me, he's an introvert. We're not much into small talk or anything like that. When we first met, we sat next to each other or in front of each other, looking at each other just like that for about 30 seconds. Those were probably the longest 30 seconds of my life. He then went on and explained in detail what he was working on. Details is one of the very important characteristics that really highlighted his abilities. He always did very in-depth reviews of drafts. He always started with, I have a few comments, and then he went deep into what was wrong or what needed to be corrected in different documents. He always wrote to his co-author saying, oh, I made a few editorial changes to the document, where he had probably completely rewritten the whole thing. He still has about 2 or 3 other RFCs on the pipeline, so we're looking forward to keep working with him on the completion of that work. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it to this IETF, but I want your help in thanking him for his work and in wishing him good luck in his retirement. Thank you.
So next, I'd like to recognize Miriam, whose last name I will never be able to pronounce, so I'm not going to pronounce it. Miriam has been co-leading our EDU team for the past 14 years, and in particular has put a really strong focus on coordinating and developing the tutorial materials and the tutorials themselves that occur typically on the Sunday of the IETF meeting week. Over the years, her and her day job at the RIPE NCC, even as it has changed and gotten busier and busier, and she's gotten more occupied with things that take her further away from the IETF, she has continued to remain dedicated to this task and to donating her time and helping us out to create a program of activities that help new people understand IETF technologies and processes and everything else that they need to be successful in the IETF. She's, I don't think we'll necessarily never see you again at an IETF meeting. I think she'll be back to the IETF, but stepping down from her role in the EDU team. So please join me in thanking Miriam, and we have a small gift for you as well.
I joined the EDU team 14 years ago. I guess you did the math, right? That was when Brian Carpenter was the IETF chair, for those of you who remember that. That's a long time ago. Primarily to start the IETF journal at the time, because I felt it was better to do it within the IETF as an IETF activity. Now the IETF journal won't be no more, and so I decided to step down from the EDU team. But no, just kidding. I just felt like, it's coincidence. I just feel like I don't have enough time anymore to put into doing a good enough job for the EDU team. So, but thanks for the recognition. It's very kind.
I've known for a while this moment was coming, and I've been dreading it. as many people know, Jim Martin, who's been building networks for the IETF for 23 years, will be stepping down as of this meeting from his position as the lead of our NOC. Jim is the closest thing that this community has to a real magician. As I said, building networks for 23 years here, and if you think about this community and the kinds of demands that we put on the network, our propensity to be able to complain about things that don't work, the incredible quality of this network, and the incredibly low volume of complaints by comparison, much of that can be attributed to Jim's leadership of the NOC. But not only that, Jim is also essentially a magician because he's capable of going to hotels, like this one, and convincing them to do things that they definitely should not agree to, and in some cases are not even in their own interest. Jim has also done other magic tricks, like building a network even when all of the equipment was lost. But I think perhaps most importantly for this community, he has inspired a team of volunteers to dedicate a tremendous amount of time and energy and resources to the NOC. And that includes entire extra weeks tacked on to the already grueling meeting week. Significant investment while they're there on the ground, extra trips to conduct site qualification visits so that we can find out in advance whether we think the venues will work for us or not. And really through his collaborative and kind spirit, inspired others in our community to donate and to serve in the interest of making the IETF better and the internet better. And that's a real magic trick. So please join me in saying thank you to Jim Martin.
Thank you, Alyssa. The truth is, you get my name up front, but the truth is it's all kinds of different people behind the scenes. I need to thank all of the equipment sponsors and link sponsors that have made this possible. Cisco and Juniper in particular. Juniper just recently gave us a bunch of new routers. I want to thank them. I need to thank all the chairs. When I started this, Fred was the chair, and every single chair all the way along has been helping us make sure this really happens because they actually understand the impact it has on the community. So I really appreciate all that help. And certainly we have all the folks in AMS. In particular, I've got to say how much I appreciate Laura Nugent, Stephanie McCammon, and Marcia. Gosh, we miss you, Marcia. And finally, the team. My team is a really amazing set of people. They come and they dedicate weeks of their lives. They're here a week before everybody else is. And it's a combination these days of contractors and volunteers, but it's all through their consistent effort and working as one team to make sure that what is delivered here, both in the meeting space as well as up in the guest rooms, because well, that's where we all keep working all the time. And the IETF does, so we want to make sure that that happens. So there's an amazing amount of work, and I mean, even this time, we ended up having to take over all of the wireless in the guest rooms. Not just take it over like we usually do, but we had to reconfigure the whole thing. So I'm just so proud of my team. And you know, I'm actually also want to thank all of you. I've been here for 25 years. I've seen what we've done as a community to impact the world, and frankly, I can't wait to see what you guys do in the next 25. Thank you all very much.
So on to our outgoing IESG members. We have 4 of them this time. First, we have Ben Campbell, who's served 4 years on the IESG. Ben has a real special place, at least from my perspective, as one of the other founders of the art area. There's not very many area directors who can claim to have founded an area. So when we merged real-time applications and infrastructure and applications about 4 years ago, Ben was a big part of that transition, which I think has been, at least in my personally completely biased view, a real success in the IETF. Ben has also been a true calming force on the IESG. I think, as everyone knows, the IESG is a perfectly harmonious body on which there's never any discord. And nevertheless, Ben's presence has been particularly useful and critical in times when some others of us were not quite getting along as well as we could have. Maybe it's his southern roots, I'm not sure, but he's always been able to kind of bring us back together and show us what's important. He's always been also willing to take the lead on some fairly difficult tasks. Recently, this included handling an appeal response, handling other kinds of community discussions about very controversial topics like what does the updates tag mean? And I'm really, really appreciative for all of that effort. So, Ben, if you could come on up, we have a small gift of appreciation for you. He's here. Is he here? No. Oh, there he is. Okay. And please join me in thanking Ben. For people who may not know, Ben is an avid sailor. And we thought, we're always talking about which hat do you have on? You have this hat on, that hat on. So we figured we could get, since you're taking off your AD hat tonight, we figured we would get you a sailor's hat. Next, we have Spencer Dawkins, our outgoing transport area director. So Spencer's been serving on the IESG for 6 years. He's the longest serving current member of the IESG, which means that as he departs us, we are losing some of our deepest historical context on the IESG, which is actually pretty critical because nobody on the IESG can ever remember, like, oh, we talked about this exact same thing last year, let alone 6 years ago. But Spencer always has that memory. I think the other really critical thing about Spencer, especially at a time when we're having lots of discussions in the IETF about how do we work together, how do we conduct ourselves, Spencer's really always been a model of, I would say, humility and kindness, not just on the IESG, but towards every person that he interacts with, as far as I've seen. And so that's really something to look up to. We also have Spencer to thank for one of the working groups which is most difficult to schedule on the entire IETF agenda, the Quick Working Group, which has a conflict with every other working group in security and transport and applications and possibly several others, like who knows what else. As soon as we do BGP over Quick, we're also going to have those set of conflicts. So thank you for that gift, Spencer. I think even after you're no longer serving, you've really drilled it into us that we need to make good choices and do the right thing. So let's hope we continue to do that. Please join me in thanking Spencer for all of his time on the IESG. I think this requires no explanation whatsoever. now?
This is the best T-shirt that anybody has ever gotten at an IETF meeting. It only took 9 years, and it was totally worth it.
Next, Terry Manderson, our outgoing Internet Area Director. Terry has been serving on the IESG for 4 years. I think Terry wins the award for most 2 a.m. phone calls. Being based in Australia, when Terry joined the IESG, we had a conversation about do we want to change the time at which we have the IESG telechats, which are typically earlier in the morning, or at least in the evening, but not in the middle of the night for the rest of us. And Terry graciously said, no, it's fine, I'll keep him in the middle of the night. So he's been doing that every 2 weeks for the last 4 years. Please, buy him a beer if you see him. And although Terry didn't have the highest number of working groups on his plate, he did have some of the hairiest ones, HomeNet. So we also have him to thank for shepherding some difficult working group discussions in the internet area. So please join me in thanking Terry, and come on up for your gift. I know you love a good t-shirt, so. And your coffee. And finally, we have Eric Rescorla, who's an outgoing security area director who's been serving on the IESG for 2 years. I think we all know that the SEC AD workload can be especially demanding, sort of expected to review in detail all the drafts, as opposed to the rest of us who just kind of do some more cursory reviews. And I think Eric's plate was particularly full, as he was also contributing as a fairly prolific individual contributor in the IETF, working on TLS 1.3, WebRTC, Acme, Quick, and so on, and also simultaneously serving as the CTO of Firefox. I think if you kind of balance those two things together, what you can make a determination about is that Ecker probably had more discusses per hour put into the IESG than any other AD that has served in recent memory. So anyone who's actually published a document in the last 2 years can, give a moment of thanks that he'll be stepping down from the IESG. But we will miss his detailed reviews as we go forward with our new team. So please join me in thanking Eric for his service on the IESG. You needed one of these. You know?
Of course I did, yes, thank you.
Make it quick.
Exactly. I have no idea, actually, because I hadn't planned anything, but here. Also, I'll still be reviewing your documents.
All right, and then I don't know who's thanking the trustees. Glenn, are you thanking the trustees? I don't really want to thank myself. So.
I don't think I've ever been up and down on stage as many times as today, so. Hey, there's been a major change happened in the LLC and the IOC. We shut the IOC down at the last meeting. But one of the things that always kind of went on along with the IOC was the IETF trust. In fact, one of the rules for being an IETF trustee up until recently was you were on the IOC. And so it is, you know, sort of the very quiet, very well, not well understood part of the whole administrative and glop that makes this place run, that is the trust. These trustees here are people who have put a lot of work in reviewing, talking about trademark management, asset management, IANA. It's not to everybody, especially if you're a hardcore engineer, the sexiest stuff, but it's really important. I'd like to really thank them for their service. We have Lou Berger, Leslie Cooper, Ted Hardy, Kave Ranjabar, the former chair, Andrew Sullivan, who managed actually to be a trustee twice in the same year by 2 different paths. He got selected by the NomCom, and they got the job over at ISOC as the CEO and president, and so he had to resign from the IOC and then get reappointed because, of course, the CEO and president of ISOC was on the IOC and once again became a trustee. So he just couldn't leave. I thought, Andrew, you might be back again. I'm not sure. We may work it out somehow. And finally, Portia, who's done a great job. Thank you, Portia. So thank you all to all the outgoing trustees.
So I think all of the outgoing IEB members are friends. So if you could all come up at once, that'd probably be great. We'll do that, and then the IEB itself will join you in a minute. But if you're an outgoing IEB member, why don't you come up now? And in a moment, the rest of you IEB can join us. For those of you who are looking forward to the IEB open mic, I remind you that we send our report in email before this, so you don't have to look at it on screen. But if you'd like to look at it on your laptops while you're waiting, it's off the IEB website. And I'll do the thanks in alphabetical order because there's no really good way of doing it. And first is Allison. And Allison, many people don't actually realize that the IRTF chair, in addition to doing all of the work of the IRTF, is also a non-voting member of the IEB. And that vote isn't really the important part of the IEB. We try not to vote very much. What we try and do is come to consensus around different topics, and the IRTF chair, and in particular Allison, has been a wonderful influence on us as we've considered some of the matters before us. It's a hard job, and it's a job which comes with other jobs, and we really want to thank Allison for her time, not just as IRTF chair, but as a member of the IEB. Don't show people what's in it just yet, because you're all going to get them out at once. So Gabriel Montenegro joined the IEB in 2017, and in addition to his general contribution, he served on the Plenary Planning Program, the Stack Evolution Program, the eName Workshop, and as shepherd of some of our critical liaisons, such as the European ICT Platforms Group. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Robert joined in 2015, and in addition to his contributions to the general work of the IDEA, he was the IAB Publications Stream Manager. He served as a NomCom liaison, served as a liaison to the IESG, worked on the IAB's response to the FCC inquiries on STIR and Shaken, served on the Stack Evolution program, and above and beyond that, he focused himself on the RFC editor. He was, in addition to being the stream manager, he led the search for the new ISE and served on the RSOC, although we have to confess that we kind of poached him. He was on the RSOC before he joined the IEB. Thank you very much, Robert. Suzanne hates going last, but that's just the luck of the draw. She joined in 2015 as well. In addition to her contributions to the general work of the IED, she served on the PRIDSEC program, the Plenary Planning Program, the Concluded Internationalization and Identifiers programs, and as an IESG liaison. And she was shepherd for any number of ICANN-related processes. Basically, if you want to think about ICANN, she did the work on that. She was the joint lead of the IANA program. She was the shepherd for the ICANN NomCom search. She led the ICANN Board of Directors liaison search. She led the RZERG search. And she managed the liaison relationship with the RSAC. So she basically kept ICANN at bay for the entirety of the rest of the IAB. And for that and many other things, we thank her. So if you would get out the gifts now to show people, the gifts are basically a very small token of the fact that we will always treat you as reserve IAB members, helping to make the internet better, more resilient, and more available to the world, even as the gifts will show, if we need to reboot it from scratch. Because these are copies of a very wonderful book, The Victorian Internet, and a set of telegraph keys, just in case we need to go all the way back. Thanks to each and every one of you. And now if I could ask the rest of the IAB to join us for the open microphone session. I know there was one person who had a question for Heather. Heather joins us as well during the course of this, so if that person, I think you have priority in line. If you want to get back in line, we'll try and have you go first.
So, logistical note for people coming up onto the stage. Only 2 of the table mics can be on at any one time. So if yours isn't working, someone else needs to turn theirs off.
Okay, while we wait for the lines to populate, why don't we start with introductions. John Bin, could you begin? Introduce yourself, John Bin.
Okay, Zhen Bin Li. It's my first time to take the IB member. I'm from the Huawei and is joined this IETF since the 2009, and until now, that's 10 years. I'm lucky and to work for the community and contribute more to the IETF. Thanks. Okay.
Hi, Stephen Farrell, fairly fresh IAB.
Yari Arco, IAB.
Melinda Shore, IAB.
Colin Perkins, incoming IRTF chair.
Heather Flanagan, not IAB.
Robert Sparks, outgoing IAB. Gabriel Montenegro, outgoing IAB.
Allison Menken, outgoing IAB, outgoing IRTF chair.
Suzanne Wolf, outgoing and departing IAB.
Ted Hardy, IAB chair.
Alyssa Cooper, continuing IETF chair.
Jeff Tensura, IAB. Wes Hardiker, newbie.
Eric Nordmark, IAB. Brian Trammell, IAB.
Christian Wittema, IAB.
Martin Thompson.
Do you need any introduction, really? Mark Nottingham, continuing IAB.
I refuse to apologize.
So if that's all you wanted to know, we can stop here. Otherwise, please get up to the mics. Please.
Yeah, I wasn't the one who was up to the mic before, but I do have a question for Heather. I'm Matt Pounset. You mentioned this A3 software that you need that seems to be hard to get a hold of, and it surprised me at first that we would use such a thing. I did some quick reading because I hadn't heard of it before. It sounds to me like this is necessary to support the SVG import. Can you clarify that?
So the short answer is to look at one of the RFC 7995 or 4 or something like that, the PDF requirements for the new format. What I'm looking for is a format that was designed for archiving. And one of our requirements in that archiving is that the XML must be included in the document so that it's a completely self-contained PDF file. that inclusion of the XML takes it just from PDF A1 to a PDF A3.
Right, okay.
And finding software that can do that was very hard.
Right, thank you.
There you are.
Hello, I'm Julius Krobacek, and I came earlier to ask a technical question, and you didn't want to take it, and I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all. And my question was, does it do mathematical formulas?
Oh, that's a good question. That's something I was talking to Henrik about earlier. Right now, we're looking at people that would want to do mathematical formulas, putting it in like the NSVG image. We've talked about using MathML. That doesn't. I participate in the W3C's publishing working group, and there seems to be a lot of controversy about how to put mathematical equations in web documents, for example, and some recommend MathJack, some recommend MathML, so I'm not actually sure what would be the right solution for us. If you have some ideas, could you come talk to me later?
Okay, now I'm bitter.
Okay, that's fair.
Hi, Richard Barnes. I'm going to continue the RFC editor love here. So I've been checking out some of the reports that you guys produce periodically on the performance of the RPC, noticing that you guys have been in the kind of lower categories of SLA performance recently. So I was just wondering what the plan is for remediation there and coming back into compliance for the SLAs.
Very good question, too. So in 2016 or so, we recognized that there was going to be a problem when we hit the format transition because we were going to be doing so much more than just editing documents. We were going to be writing new procedures. We were going to be doing additional training. We were going to be learning a whole new XML, really. And so we had requested that we had told the IOC at the time that this was going to take up to 3.25 FTE to actually stay ahead of that particular curve. And the response at the time was, we don't have money to give you 3.25 FTE, but we can talk about 1. Okay, we held off bringing in that one until we were closer to the transition. That one person has been added and has been very helpful, but as we expected, this isn't really enough to put us ahead of the curve. Now, one of the things I didn't do that I probably should have was, so that was 2016, 2017, this is now 2019, should I have gone back to the well and said, hey, we told you this is what you said you could do then, has anything changed? That I did not do, so we're working at a difficulty right now.
So do you have an ETA on when we should expect to see green again?
Probably towards the end of this year.
Just Kathleen Moriarty, just to follow up on that, what can we as a community do when we have active documents in the RFC editor queue to help? Or before that?
The single best thing that the community could do, the document shepherds could do, and the working group chairs can do is never say, oh, the RFC editor will just fix that. I have heard that actually many times where people said, yeah, we knew that was a problem, but we figured you would just fix that. You'll just fix the references. You'll just fix this particular table. We know it's a bad table, but you'll just fix it. The less we have to just fix the formatting and fix the content that way, the better things will go.
I see no one else at the microphones, so I think maybe it's time to call the IESG up to the stage. Oh, sorry, the LLC board.
Who hasn't met me yet today? Can I ask the board, starting with Jason, to please introduce themselves?
Jason Livingood, incoming.
Gonzalo Camarillo, outgoing.
Ted Hardy, outgoing.
Glendine, outgoing.
Alyssa Cooper, incoming.
Sean Turner, incoming.
And we have on screen, Maya, we have audio?
Hi, Maya Joe,
And Peter, our last remaining incoming board member, is currently on a plane back home, so he can't join us today. Do we have any questions for either the incoming or the outgoing board? I'm loving this. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much.
Dots. Trustees left without their dots. Other trustees never came up. That's fine. Okay. If the IESG could come on up. Let us start with the proverbial passing of the dots. Does everybody who should have a dot? Because now you're on the hook. You, I'm looking at you. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Mic lines are open. Oh, Alexi, come on. Oh no, I guess we should probably introduce ourselves, right? Okay, I've already introduced myself 3 times, so I forgot. We can start at the end with Eric. Could you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Okay. Eric Criscola, as you can see, outgoing. Adam Roach, continuing art area director.
Roman D'Amelio, incoming security.
Ben Kadek, continuing security.
Magnus Westlund, incoming transport.
Deborah Brungard, continuing routing area.
Terry Manderson, escaping into area. Cheers.
Eric Ving, incoming transport. Cheers with water. I did say transport? Yes.
It's a coup.
Not much going on in Int anyway. then I'm out.
Okay. So apparently there's some overstep.
I meant internet, obviously. Okay. You know now what I was drinking before.
Mirja Kuhlewin, transport.
Ted Hardy, ex officio IEB chair.
Alyssa Cooper, general area.
Ben Campbell, outgoing art.
Barry Lieba, the new Ben.
Warren Kamari, continuing ops, or returning ops technically, but basically the same thing.
Alvaro Retana, continuing routing.
Ignas Bogdanas, management and operations.
Spencer Dawkins, I used to be a transport area director.
Alexei Melnikov, continuing art.
Okay, now the mic lines are open. Looks Looks like David wants to be first. Dave?
Okay, David Black. So Warren asked me to say this. So it's a good idea, thank Warren. It's a bad idea, blame me. I thought the routing architecture session this afternoon was excellent, very useful, and it was clearly a really good idea to hold it during the week as opposed to in the usual Sunday tutorial slot. So well done, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone involved in organizing that.
Okay, Yoshiro Yonea. So I'm happy to join IETF in person again. Last time I joined IETF remotely, and during the IETF meeting, there was a lot side meeting. That was, I see the agenda was very exciting, but I couldn't participate remotely because no audio or video equipment in the side meeting room. So I hope to give opportunity to, for the remote participants to join side meeting.
Thanks. Does anybody want to talk to this, or I can speak to it? Okay. So just a couple of responses on that. It's not you're not the only person who has expressed this to us. There's a few reasons why we don't currently provide remote participation for side meetings. One is that we're doing an experiment with side meetings. I didn't talk about it in the plenary deck because it's been going on for some time, but you can read more about it in our pre-meeting report. And part of the thinking with why we are not supporting remote participation in the side meetings was that we're trying to clarify some of the distinctions between what is an official sanctioned IETF activity on the IETF agenda with full support versus what is organized activity by the community itself. We've had some issues in the past with confusion around what's a real BOF, and if people just organize a side meeting that looks enough like a BOF, then they start to tell people that they had a BOF, and that was creating some difficulty for us. So that's part of the reason why we make the rooms available, because we have the space, but we don't otherwise provide other kinds of support for those meetings. The other issue is just the contention for Meet Echo. We've signed up for a certain level of support with them, and there's many rooms in which they are providing an amazing service to us, and so adding rooms factors into the kind of service that we can get. Not to say it's not possible, but just that's another factor that we take into consideration.
So I'll just make a comment on the first reason for that. I think we should not punish the remote participants to make that point.
Okay, I don't think we have been punishing them. Okay, Paul?
Okay, Paul Wouters. I've reviewed a number of documents that were related to Yang modeling, and I found that often people put values that are in IANA registries into RFC documents, and so you get these incomplete or obsoleted entries of Yang values in the RFCs, while they should really be pointers to the proper IANA registries. So I think it would be good if there's some steering happening across the working groups to make sure that we don't produce those documents in that way.
So speaking of the work related to Yang modeling, and especially the coordination between the work on the separate technology components for models, yes, that's an area that is lacking, and this is something that is certainly on my focus. And we probably will see something more tangible happening across the coordination of the model development soon. So from a problem perspective, this is understood, and there are attempts to try to address that. This probably will not be a very quick and simple fix, but at least there's work going on in that direction.
Hi, Alyssa. Elliot here. We had a really good side meeting on IoT onboarding today, and I want to thank Torlis and Kent and a few others for really helping us to try and at least document what we're doing, what is available in terms of capabilities for IoT onboarding, particularly for wireless. And the side meeting mechanism has been particularly useful for me for a number of ways. One comment that I did want to pass to the IESG, and I suspect other community members had this problem too, which is we really did all pile it on today, and it was hard to get to everything we wanted to get to. So I'm not sure how to judge the Wednesday experiment based on that, but it was pretty packed, and you sort of had to zig and zag from room to room to get to what you wanted to do.
Yes, agreed. Brett.
First off, I want to thank all of the outgoing ADs. I appreciate your service. You do an immense amount of work. To those that are coming in, I wish you good luck. Alyssa, I'd like to thank you for whatever you've done behind the scenes to improve the demeanor of meetings and the IETF work that has been done this week. Compared to the past 2 or 3 or 4 meetings, the working group meetings have been much more amenable and a lot more friendly and open. So whatever you have done or whatever the ISG has done behind the scenes, I would really like to thank you, because as I commented in Bangkok, some of the meetings over the past couple 4 or 5 sessions have been pretty vile. But this week so far has been really great. And even though there's been some, level of disagreement, as there always will be, I think everybody has been very open and more open-minded. So whatever you're doing, please continue. But I thank you for that. I do have a question. I would like to know what your plans are to drive growth in the IETF. In the form of attracting new people to come in and work on existing work products, and then also to get people to come to the IETF with their work and have it be done here versus choosing another SDO. Thank you.
Thanks. So just on the first bit, I talked a little bit about the things that we've done in the IESG since 103, but I would say that part of raising awareness is just creating a conversation in the community about some of these issues. So I would turn that back on you and others who raised the issue to us at the last meeting and have been continuing to engage on the topic of conduct and behavior and how we work together, because I think that's actually probably had the most influence thus far, is just that people are talking about it, they're more aware of it, they're more cognizant of it when they go to the microphone or when they kick off a working group session. And so I think we're starting to see the effects of that. As far as growth, I'm sorry? The first part? Sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, though. I'm Wes Hardiker, the IETF Guides lead, one of 2, and I have to say that the number of positive compliments I've gotten from newcomers that come to this organization and get help either through the Guides program or just people, walking them through the process, it makes all the difference in the world. And I think that we'll see much greater retention if everybody's willing to reach out to people with a badge and see how they're doing. And this is a really confusing organization to get started in. And so I encourage everybody to really participate. And if you're able to be a guide, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to interact with somebody, and you meet them once on Sunday and maybe once later in the week and interact over email a little bit, and it makes all the difference in the world. So please consider that. That's one of the best things we can do.
Thank you. And thank you for your time that you've put into that, Wes. Yep, Spencer.
If I could just respond to that a little bit. So it seems like to me that there's 2 things that are helpful. One is that when people do come here, that we don't scare them away. It's the numbers for first-time attendees are kind of amazing. Like we'll see 150, 250 people who are first-time attendees at a meeting, but we're not growing by 100 people, or 100 people a meeting. You know, so like people come, you know, so for people who, and I'm not talking like now, I'm talking like over the past 20 years, that, you know, we've always had first-time attendees, and frankly, a lot of them kind of bounced off. And I think that we have made an awful lot of changes to make it easier for people to come in here and at least get their feet on the ground and understand what's going on, understanding what we do, understanding how we do it. The other, so, you know, step one is don't scare them away. And number two is help make it easier for them to get stuff done that they need to get done. And the ISG and the community together have done an awful lot to come up with ways for people to find each other, for people to have conversations with each other. You know, whether it's the side meeting experiment that turned into a not experiment, or whether it was Hot RFC that was an experiment that sounds like it's about to not be an experiment. But just anything that we can do to help people find each other and have conversations with each other. I'm holding my first brainstorming session that I announced at Hot RFC tomorrow, and you know, it's like I've just been too busy as an area director, but hey, I used to be an area director, right? So you know, so I'm really excited about that. But just, you know, watching what other people have been able to do with it, and putting groups together to talk and you know, explore ideas and kind of triage what their interests are and say, how can we cooperate? I think that, you know, that's really been important too. And you know, the two things I'd say about that are, you know, a lot of that stuff is pretty new. And a lot of it was done in, you know, interaction with the community. It wasn't like the ISG went off into a cave and came back out with this brilliant plan. So I think, you know, you all deserve a big hand on that as well. And thank you all for the work that you do.
Terry?
So a couple of points from my point of view is that when we talk about the tone of the meetings, there's a fantastic line that pretty much says the culture you have is based on the behaviors you condone. Now that sits on everyone's shoulders. It sits on our shoulders and it sits on your shoulders. So think deeply about that in the meetings, in the working group meetings, in the efforts that you undertake within the IETF. My second point is that, and this kind of harks back to one of something my professor told me as a postgrad, was that you're no longer the customer, you're the product. And as the product, you're the key to the network. And it's not just the network of, I'm building routers and things like that, it's a network of people. So each and every one of you are the part of the network. So go back to your organization, and if you want to build the IETF, go back to your organization and pick that junior engineer, pick that junior developer, and drag them along to the IETF. Facilitate them coming here, facilitate them learning, facilitate them contributing, and bringing them into this culture and adjusting the growth of the IETF.
Okay. Just to build a little bit more on the question about growth, I think it's important to remember that in terms of sheer numbers of people, we're not trying to maximize that value, right? We even actually have a consensus RFC to be, which says that maximizing attendance at the meetings is not a goal. And that's important because it keeps us focused on what the goal actually is, which is, you know, facilitating interoperability and developing the technologies that are going to make the internet work better. That often means bringing in new people, new ideas, but it doesn't necessarily mean bringing in more people as the objective. I think there are some specific things that this sort of outgoing IESG has been doing to try to foster more engagement from particular communities. We've had a number of us and other people in the community that we've engaged with to reach out to some of the operators groups, some of the RIRs. I think we've had a particular help from the IRTF side with ANRW and ANRP, bringing in whole new batches of folks from the academic and research communities, which has been a great effort. And other kind of smaller engagements. So some people know that the NetDev conference was here last week. We had some cross-pollination with the Linux kernel developers there. A number of us were there in attendance and gave talks and so on. So obviously, the people up here, we're all volunteers too. We don't have unlimited budgets for outreach, nor do we have unlimited time, but we've been trying to do some targeted efforts to talk to particular communities where we think that the engagement could be better, that we could derive more value from them and they from us. So that's one kind of smaller thing that we've been doing as well. Next.
Hello, thank you. Jian Kang Yao. I just have my personal suggestion. So I will open a new GTLD application soon. I'm wondering, is the IETF or RFC can be applied as a new GTLD? For example, I have public RFC number 1. I have maybe apply RFC2 .IETF as my domain name. Everyone can check my domain name, RFC number .IETF for check my RFC content. Also, some company, for example, Cisco, or for my company, Cynic, or some Microsoft .IETF, they can check any IETF related work by that company. So also, I think there's 2 benefits. First benefit is that we can easily identify the work. Also, search RFC is more easily. The second, I think, is we can increase the revenue of IETF, because when I first joined IETF in around 2005, that the registration fee is around $500 US. Now, plus tax already double, around $1,000 US. I think if we have IETF new GTLD selling domain names, we can we never need to increase the registration fee again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. I want to point out two things very quickly. One is that the Internet Society, which of course is our corporate home and a longtime donor to the IETF activity, also has another body in it, PIR, the Public Interest Registry. I think it might be a little bit confusing for the IETF to go into the business of one of the other subsidiaries of ISOC. And further, the actual string IETF is a reserve string. There were, when Ayanna took up the task of opening the GTLD process, there were a number of particular strings which were reserved because they were in use by the technical community, and IETF is one of those strings. So it cannot be applied for as a GTLD.
Please.
Julius Krawacek. So thank you very much for what you were saying earlier. I'm actually part of the underpaid working class minority you were mentioning, academia. And so I've been fairly active over the last years at IETF. I have my name on 6 or 7 drafts, of which 4 are in the last stages of publication. That's been 4 years of very hard work, which I'm very glad for. And when I realized a few years ago that I was going to get involved and that I was going to have to come fairly regularly at IETF, I actually had to ask for extra funding. So that's an additional stepping stone if you want to get involved to the IETF. By academic criteria, the IETF meetings are very expensive. And so if you are thinking about outreach, perhaps you might consider something I think many of you are aware, that the fee structure of IETF meetings is not necessarily adapted to academia.
Thank you. So this is not the body that sets the fee structure, but I think all of those people are probably still here in the room and heard that. So it's something that has been discussed before, and we can certainly take the feedback into account. Do you have any other questions from the floor?
Anyone? Yes. Arnaud Tadei. So I would like to echo the
the previous speaker. I'm from the industry, and I spoke to a couple of enterprise customers recently, and it's not better for them. What is difficult for the academia, I understand, but for the enterprise people who are not here, by the way, I'm not talking about the vendors, the telcos, and the other bodies, but who is from finance sector here, from energy sector here, from other verticals? Very few. And they don't come, first of all, they don't know about IETF. And if they would know, for them to justify sending people regularly out of production, what they have to do, extremely difficult. So I don't have a good answer. I'm sure it's not a new problem, but it does not seem we are converging. And the problem is then it causes an issue of representation. Who we mean when we say the community? Who are we? I don't know. I don't think it's actually a correct representation of what the real constituencies of those objects connected, those people, organizations, part of the network. Many are not here. So are we missing some feedback loop from some people? Open question. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate your comments. I think it isn't, I totally agree with you. Not everybody is here, and that is actually in part by design, right? So there's a lot of work that we do that can be done entirely remotely, and we really encourage that in the IETF, and that applies equally to people who don't want to show up in person, and also, fortunately or unfortunately, people who can't afford to come. So I think it's really important to remember to reinforce that. Most of our working group chairs do a good job of reinforcing that decisions get made on the mailing list and so on, but we all need to remember that that's a path of engagement and participation in the IETF that is heavily used, more so than attendance at the in-person meetings.
Hello, I'm Watson. I want to thank you all for the hard work you do, and I'd also like to say that remote participation can get valuable things done. This is the first time I've been to an IETF meeting, and I came here and many people are like, oh, you exist. They know me from emails, they know me from contributions to draft. I just want to thank you for making it possible to do that. It's really been it really is a big achievement. Thank you.
Thank you. That is exactly the reaction I had when I saw your badge.
And you're not alone. I've met several people who I've known for quite a while on the mailing lists, and I'm glad to see that some were able to come to this meeting. I hope many of you can come back, but even if you can't, we value your participation on the list.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.